Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. And I'm doing a show called Iconology, and that's the study of icons. And I'm studying an icon with my guest here today because he is an icon. And I want to introduce you to Kelan Cohran, and he has so many specialties. He's a musicologist, he's an astrologer, he's a spherologist, he's a mathematician, he's a teacher, he's a musician, and he's just the progenitor of some of the most outstanding, talented, creative young people that you could ever imagine. And so I thought that I would invite him over to talk to me because he does all these things. He teaches classes, he performs at the Ethiopian Diamond, and he keeps himself very, very busy. And I think that I should first of all thank you, Kelan Cohran, for consenting to come down here, because I know you're a busy man.
Well, it's a privilege any time to be with you. You know that.
Well, I thank you so much for saying that. Yeah. But you know, Dr. Burroughs was on the show and she was asking what will your legacy be, and I thought, you know, there was no question of what your legacy is. Your legacy is still living because you are living your legacy, and you have created all of these musicians and all of these fine thinkers who are carrying out the legacy that who inspired you? Where did you get your influences from?
From coming up in Black America. I was just looking at Paul Robeson's name being omitted from the bunch of Rhodes Scholars that were mentioned in the Sun-Times today.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't mention him. I thought he was the greatest of the Rhodes Scholars because he was multifaceted. He was an all-American athlete, a great singer, and the greatest of the Shakespearean actors. I mean, there was no limit to what he had done.
A scholar.
So there are no Rhodes Scholars that was on his level, and they left his name out. I think I was inspired by the omissions, more or less, because I was educated at Lincoln University, where blacks couldn't teach anywhere else, and so they were all bunched up on the hill there, all these dynamic giants. As I've mentioned before, Dr. Walter R. Talbot, who got his PhD at Princeton at 22 under Einstein. And in my opinion, I believe that Einstein learned from him. Dr. Marty D. Taylor, who got his PhD from Enrique Fermi in 1945 when they started the first sustained reaction under Stagg Field. So I was always placed in these environments where these heavy people were. I have to justify that exposure, I guess you put it.
Who placed you in Lincoln University?
My parents.
Your parents?
Yeah, I went to grade school eventually in Troy, Missouri, and the principal of the school had been a star athlete and musician at Lincoln University, and he taught me for 4 or 5 years and recommended that they send me there for high school. So I spent almost 6 years there at Lincoln University in that environment. And most people didn't understand that I had an exceptional education in music and other things. In fact, I had drama under Paulie, who was considered one of the best directors in the country. We used to put on some heavy productions there. But I'd like to talk about today. We're in change.
Go ahead.
Yes, we're in change. The first thing, you said I was an astrologer, which I am, but astrology can be confused with people who don't know the sky. There are many people who give predictions and things about the heavens without knowing anything about the heavens themselves. See, I started in the sky looking, and I tried to get people with me, and no one would dare look up with me. So I had to do it myself. But I became an astronomer, and I spent 10 years as what do you call them when you donate your services?
A volunteer.
Volunteer there at the Adler Planetarium after I wrote the song that gave them their biggest show. But I studied there since 1961, so I've been in the sky 47 years. And I've been fortunate enough to predict the tsunami. I got a whole book the year before it came out. Not a book written, but the mathematics of it. And I also predicted Katrina. And that was unusual because when the hurricane came, it went up the coast of Florida in the Atlantic and then crossed over into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's where the troubles came. But I also predicted the financial collapse that's coming. And I wanted to come on the show to tell people that that was the beginning of the end of this financial system. Another system has to be devised because it's not fair, it's not equitable, and we have moved into a time when the only choice we have is to empower the people of the earth or either vanish. And so I guess you might say Obama is the symbol of that beginning. One of the things astronomically and astrologically is the cycle that we're in. This cycle is coming from 103,600 years ago. And it's 4 of those cycles. And the 4th cycle we're entering, or rather the 5th one we're entering now. People call this the age of Aquarius, but Aquarius was named much later. In ancient times, we had seven cycles or 7 divisions in the heavens. Everything was 7 that is cosmic. And so, although Buckminster Fuller, who is a spherologist also, he predicted in his book Critical Path back in '81 that the collapse would come because we didn't devise a way of sharing. We have to learn to share. And actually, the way that we've been treated, I was listening to Dr. Burroughs and her presentation and how she focused on the fact that we were criticized so much, and we accepted it. We grew up in a world of being dissed. And so our young people now are dissed even more than we were. And so they didn't have a future in their vision. Now I want to tell them all that we were lost because we had no knowledge of our origin, which is what the DuSable Museum and people like that have focused on, that there was something before slavery. There was much more before slavery because we are actually the angels that came down from the cosmic energy. And we have digressed into less than normal people. We have to pick up the mantle of our ancestors, which is an angelic heritage. We have to learn to give, just as she was mentioning. Our problem is that we take. We're so many of us trying to find a way to grab and get and take. And so we don't understand the power of giving, which is who we are. We are givers. And we've given the world everything of substance that it has. Right here in America, America wouldn't be the outstanding place it is had not they had the energy of our presence. Because we are the people of spin. We are the originators of all of the valuable things that we use. Anything that is here of substance was developed out of our foundation. And our young people have to learn that within them is more than anything in the external world. They each walk with a piece of the puzzle of the future in them. And they must learn to search for that and manifest it. What I've done, I was fortunate enough to find mine. And everybody I looked around picked up. Just like your song here, your opening song, I was listening to it. It's on the African ground bass, which is a form of playing the same bass over and over and over. Well, that system didn't exist until I had to devise a way to play the francophone with our jazz and our popular music. And I used the ground bass from studying the singing of the gospel music. There's a place in the gospel music where they would stop and just sing the same thing over and over and let the soloist stretch out on it. And that's where I adopted my system, which I call a melodic system. And now it's used when you turn on the news, that's all you hear is the ground bass and people stretching out on it. Well, they adopt these things because they hear they are good, and they don't care where they came from, just as long as they can use it, you see. So there are many things that we have contributed, all of us, to American culture that sustains it and holds it up without any credit. So I didn't want to take up all the time.
No,
of that.
I don't want to interrupt you at all. I want you to act as though you are giving one of your lectures, and you just go ahead.
Well,
you have so much to share.
I didn't prepare necessarily for all that, but I am teaching at the Center for Inner City Studies, where I teach the science of music, and I decided to put the philosophy out here because no one really seems to understand what our origins are or what it means, and we all come from cosmic relationships. Even, you know, we don't acknowledge that we are cosmically sustained in our daily lives. We are radiated from the cosmos in our head. That's why the meninges have electromagnetic particles in it, because that's where we get our stimulation. And our body and our rhythms, all of our rhythmic functions are regulated from the cosmos and cosmic energy. When we pass through negative situations, it reflects in us negatively. And when we pass through positive situations in the cosmos, it reflects positively. So we are totally controlled from cosmic energy. Now, that means those people who have the receptors, some people don't have receptors, so they're not able to respond to the cosmic energy. They have to look to others who do that. Now, let's go back and look at the cultures on Earth. If you go all over the Earth, you'll find there are cultures that have been developed, and all of those cultures are based in cosmic phenomena, except the European. They adopted the cosmic phenomena in the 1500s. That's the reason they don't speak of anything before then. Actually, it was around the 1500s when they discovered the meaning of the zero. They had picked it up in Spain, 1105 AD, and they had this information and didn't know what to do with it. They thought that zero was an ornament. And so after 500 years, they discovered that it meant you could go the same way on the other side as you go on this side. So all things in the cosmos are dual. We are the dual expression, man and woman, up and down, in and out, and all of that. And so for every entity that you experience or see, there's an opposite somewhere, and you can find it, whether you see it or not. And so the black hole is another example of that. We don't know what's on the other side of that, but we understand this side, and whatever is over there must be parallel to this side. So cosmic understanding teaches us more about a direction, more about the timing, and more about the cycles that our lives are based on. So that's why I decided to start teaching the science of music. Music is the language of cosmos. Colors are the language. Mathematics are the language. But in this society, they lean more to math because they don't understand music. And so music is the real language, and that's what African people came down through the millennia with a mastery of music. Rhythms, melody, harmony, and forms. So now, I think I put enough out there for those people who really want to go deeper. They've got pathways. But each one of us are born as eternal beings. This is only a cycle in our existence. And so when we search out the meaning of this particular existence, then we can draw from the eternal well. Just like internet. You know, internet puts us technically in touch with the world. Well, our eternity puts us in touch with our ancestors. Everything that has ever been developed in this experience is available to us through our ancestors. How do we get to that? We have to give. We have to return to our original form of life. that of angels who give. Taking and, you know, all of this cheating and all of these other things that we have been induced to are worthless. We go nowhere. We gain nothing with it. It's only when people like Dr. Burrs, you know, she's a giver. And all of those people who gave, Paul Robeson, you go back through the history, all of them were givers. I drank some coffee, you know. I made that mistake. Makes me nervous.
All right. You know, when you talk about predicting or projecting or understanding events that had not yet taken place because of your continued study and interest in what is going on.
The cyclic rhythms.
Yes. That knowing this kind of, having this kind of information must sensitize you a great deal to errors that you see us making because we lack that understanding as lay people.
Solomon said, to seek of knowledge is to seek of sorrow. And the sorrow is that you see what could easily be changed, but you know it's all cyclic and you can't change it until it's time. Like the Afro Arts Theater, it was too early. See, it could never exist in an environment like that because it would open up a whole can of worms that no one could handle. Now people are more knowledgeable. They can understand the diet. They can understand the heritage and things like that more. There are things like people drink bottled water and stuff like that all over, you know, and they're wearing sandals and they're taking herbs and things like that. Well, we were doing that in Afro Arts Theater, see? And we were teaching the languages, Hebrew, Arabic, and the other one, what, Swahili. So now people are more, I say they're in a better position to accept cosmic knowledge and energy. I'm just projecting it out there to young people, especially that can hear this, because they have a package. And one of the things I've noticed from performing in the cafes is that the younger people are in cycles. They are very much aware and much more tuned up to things than their parents. They're bringing another world here that we distress the world we're in now, but they're bringing another world. And I'd like to encourage them to go to their ancestry for the keys to that world. Because if it's contrary to them, they're going to have more conflicts.
How are we going to get people who are seemingly less interested in who they are to want to know who their ancestors are?
Well, everybody likes something, and no one likes conflict. And so they can look and look and look, and they don't find the doorway until they submit to the ancestors. It is the only doorway that is open. Anything else is momentary, you know, or will end. That which I've had, I discovered in 1961. The projection of one's life has to be based on truth, as people all know. And I searched for truth, and all of my truth ran out until I went to my ancestors, or until I went to the spiritual aspect of life.
Talk to us about the spiritual aspect of life as you view it.
Well, first of all, I was introduced to spirituality through the Christian church, and I couldn't relate to that. When I was a teenager, I left that. And although some people drew a lot of substance from it, I couldn't, there were too many things there that I couldn't relate to, like the forgiveness and all that, do anything and then be forgiven, you know. I couldn't relate to that. Then I went to Islam, and they practice more, you pay for what you do, you know. There are other religions out here, the Buddhists, which they submit, but when you go into the Buddhist history in China, they were very abusive. back during that cycle of their existence. I couldn't find a pathway out here until I looked in the heavens and I saw the sky, and I said, this is the same sky my ancestors looked at. And so I began to look there to see if I could see what they saw and feel what they felt. And little by little, I began to grow in that direction.
So did you look at the sky from the standpoint of astronomy for the position?
I
of
didn't
the
have a name for it. I looked
Okay.
up one day, one night, and there were these beautiful stars up there in a configuration I'd never seen before. So I began to pursue that, and it was so beautiful, and it touched me. I had never heard anyone speak of the sky having feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went up there on South Chicago, up on the railroad tracks there, I could see the sky very clear, and that began to give me fascination and answers. But it was stages. I've been going through stages for 47 years. And my latest stage, I would say now, is that I see cycles, and I see all the progression of events in cyclic form and patterns.
And the cycle that we're in now is a cycle of change.
This is the greatest change in 103,600 years. That's how strong this cycle is. And we're entering it. And people call it the age of Aquarius, but that's a small cycle. That's that's only 25,900 years.
So it means change or vanish?
Well, the change is superior, so anything doesn't flow with that change is going to be eliminated. That's the way it happens. It's just like, for instance, an animal that is having trouble adapting to the environment that they meet. Those animals will perish. And so there's a propensity in this society to try to preserve animals who have reached this point. And it may be simply because some of the people in this society are faced with the same extinction because they can't reproduce. And so reproduction is the key to life. Therefore, when we look back on our African ancestry, we find that the African woman produces 7 children a lifetime in average. And she has the highest average of any woman on the planet. We have in America an attitude amongst our women that they don't want to have any children.
Well, I have 7.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? But that is the key to life, is the reproduction. And that's why in every culture, it's not sex, but bonding is the top consideration in all cultures. So
just on a mundane level, I think of how little bonding we tend to do now in these urban centers.
Almost none.
Because people don't come and set a spell. You know, people don't come and visit for no other reason than just to be in your company and to communicate with you or to find out how you doing.
Well, we're induced away from that by the people who are in control of this society, because their concept is not one of bonding. When you look at their history, it wasn't one. They don't have bonding in their history. For instance, like when we were young people ourselves, we lived in communities where all our relatives were in the same block or within walking distance. And now our relatives, we contact them through telephone, which is controlled.
Through voicemail.
Yeah, and voicemail and stuff like that. And that's control.
Email.
Can be cut off or wiped out any kind of way. So actually we don't have contact with one another except through some other vehicle. The voice is also the most powerful thing that we possess in this form of life. And so the voice is music and the language of the cosmos. And we need to exercise that voice with one another and to one another. There's an energy that's expounded during those discourses that we are missing. And it's not transferred over the telephone.
No, it isn't. And even though some of us are not really living that far away. We could make that excuse, but some of us are not living that far apart from each other,
and still use the phone,
and still don't find the time. And they talk about how busy, you know, all of us talk about how busy we are and how we meant to do this or that. But the sharing time, when you talked about sharing, I thought about all the things that need to be shared.
Yes.
And I thought about the fact that we are not raising children who
That's
even
the main
understand
thing.
the concept of sharing.
Yes.
Because every child has his own room and his own TV and his own video games and his own
concepts.
Everything, you know. I have one child that has twins, and when I would want to get something for them, I would always have to look for two. You know, they had to be identical, and if you couldn't find two, then you don't bring any. You know, and finally I said, this is ridiculous.
Right.
That why do they have to have both have to have the same thing? Why can't they just have different stuff and they can share it? One can wear it this day and another one can wear it the other day.
Or they have to be taught that this person is this and that person is that. My children were taught like that because they wanted to wear each other's clothes. They would switch up clothes. And I told them the energy in this one's clothes is different. You know, you're taking on an energy that you should be developing your own energy. And so that's not a good practice.
Well, I just think that if we're going to be talking about sharing, we're going to certainly have to look for the ways in which we can share.
Yes.
Because we may not have one of everything for everybody.
I think circumstances are going to force us into who we're supposed to be, because, as I said, we're in a grand cycle, and the eventuality is going to take care of the business. I was just pointing out what is coming, but whether I point it out or not, or whether I know about it, it's going to happen anyway.
Well, it troubles me when it's really not disguised. You know, you just get a little sliver, a little bit of news here, a little bit there, and so forth and so on, and you can see that all these assurances that you're being given cannot possibly be based in fact.
No.
So, you know, it's just somebody wants you not to blow your top, you know, not to break down.
That's what I meant about Solomon. You know, being conscious of the ills is painful, to be conscious of it. But you have to learn that it's going to take place anyway, and then you slow down and just deal with your contribution.
But you have people that you love that you would like to advise. You like to pull a coat here and there. You like to say, don't make that decision, or don't make that move, or wait before you do that.
I have my own children. You see, a good example is like I taught them in the basement in the morning at 5 a.m. All right. They hated getting up early. So when they got a certain age, they said, we don't want to do it anymore. It's okay, fine, you're entitled to that. And so they were big enough to go for themselves. And they began to deal on their own. And after about 3 or 4 years, somewhere in there, they asked me about the instruments again. And so now they were famous because they went back to the instruments where they were trained. I think there's a time and a cycle for all things. And so you have to trust in the ancestors, in the ancestral flow. You have to trust in the power and the ability in each of us that it will manifest itself in the proper time, in the proper cycle.
And you don't have to save anybody?
I don't think you save yourself. Because we all messed up.
How did we get messed up?
Well, that's slavery, you know. In order to have slaves, you had to create a mule and a nigger. Those were the two necessary ingredients for this form of slavery that we experienced. And so that was created through generations of preparation. Even today, we're still being prepared. That's why young blacks can go out and shoot one another just for recreation or the slightest anger. There's a cultural dynamic to our condition. And that's why things like the positive things in our society are set aside. You can go into television and look how the man has been dissed over the last 15 or 20 years. The black man has been dissed just unbelievably. In every play, in every type of situation, his role has been less and less and less. And so now all the other people are beginning to experience that, and we have a problem with the male in the educational process. They're trying to find ways to solve his problems. But the way to solve that is go back to reality, you see. And so we have, in our culture, it's run by people who are not prepared with the depth. And we are trained in institutions where if you have a PhD or a master's, somebody has to approve that. And I doubt if anyone that approves your degree has the knowledge that you need. That's my concept. Because I was fortunate enough, I had to leave school early because I didn't have the money to continue. My mother and my stepfather separated, and so I had to find other means. And I didn't want to really work and go in as I was training as a chemist. And so I didn't want to work with that heavy load. We had to spend 5 hours a day on our studies alone, just research.
And not mentioning the time in class.
In class, and if I'd had a job to that, there was nothing else I could do. And I had lived there on the campus all those years as a big shot, you know, I could do this and do that, all that stuff. You know how it is with young people. And so I didn't want to do that, and I left school and started playing my horn over in East St. Louis. And I got another picture of life. I'm very grateful for that. And little by little, I struggled around until I met some heavyweight people. The first one I met was Mac Shan. In 1950, I traveled a country with him, and I got to see America from the underbelly. I saw, you know, we played in all the houses of prostitution and the joints and where people were totally out of it, you know. And I was one of the leaders of the outside. But then little by little, I was picked up, and I got a chance to learn more about music. I was sent to the Naval Academy, and when I got there were 3 blacks in a class of about 300. And so this was in 1951. It was a tremendous amount of energy generated on us because we were supposed to be unworthy to play decent music. And oh yeah, and so in all the classes and everything we attended, there was this energy of inferiority placed on us. And I always rejected that. I'm a bull, you know. So I always rejected that. And little by little, I think it started me on the road to being conscious of my color and what it means in everything I do. You might say it made me a militant. Later on, I was blessed to come into my spiritual awareness, or my spiritual rebirth. And I don't have enough time to talk about that. That's a whole show. But I'll say that after that, I began to make instruments, and I departed from the concept that is popular in this world. I began to deal with things from within rather than external. I merely read books, and I studied other things to prove what was coming to me from within. And that's why I tell young people there's more inside of them than there is outside. Each one has a whole universe in them if they will search for it and bring it to the surface and in their daily lives. See?
You're teaching the class, you teaching the one class in the science of music, and the other class is what?
Beginners. I try to give children the proper introduction to music because they go into schools, and the school is limited to what has been passed down in this society, which is insufficient to produce the proper person to connect with their ancestry.
Do you have any apprentices, people who are studying under you?
Yeah.
Who's going to carry this legacy on?
Well, that's one of the reasons I decided to teach the science, because I was withholding it simply because every time I put something out there, I saw it copied by other people without giving us any credit. A good example is on the beach. we started people in outdoor performances, and with the sound of the francophone and the ground African bass music. The next year, here comes Woodstock, which is a sad imitation of what we were doing, because we were trying to reach a divinity in ourselves, and they come up with all this other stuff. And so I began to see that everything that came out of us, for instance, we introduced the health concept. There were people in Southern California who were very advanced in the health concepts that are popular today, but they wouldn't tell anybody. They kept it to themselves as though it's something for exclusive group, you know, where we put it out in the masses. And now you have people like Whole Foods who market it and charge expensive prices for this, and going right back to the same place they were in Southern California. Eventually, health food would be something that only wealthy people can afford.
Isn't that ridiculous?
No, that's the way this society operates. Like I tell people all the time, this $5.99 instead of $6 tell you that somebody is cheating. And the fact that they cheat you on your price, they'll cheat you in other ways. The whole concept is not to serve in business, but to take advantage of people.
What makes the difference between $5.99 and $6?
Well, you think $5.99, the 5
you
sticks
think of
first.
the 5, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, all right.
When it's really $6, ain't
Right.
a penny away.
Right, right.
So that's a device to fool people with, and it shows that the people who are selling are devious and want to beat you any way they can. Otherwise, they just tell you $6.
And they just conceal the truth.
Yeah. And so you look at the nature of people that run this society, they are all crooks. That's what brought about the financial collapse. You know, if you take 300 people in the city of Chicago, that's enough money to change the world with. But yet the money is gone. People, the mayor's crying about the money that they need. But that's because people have stolen. So many people have stolen money that there isn't enough for the people who put the money up.
And they can't punish these people. They say that even the automobile people will not suffer for the mismanagement of the industry. That, you know, they have to do something about the errors that they've made.
Well, look at
but
that.
They are still going to be wealthy and live well from now on because they cannot be
more
punished.
than they can spend in a lifetime. And there are people right here, you know, 33,000 millionaires right here in this area. And people sleeping on park benches. You know what I mean? You see, the world is not going to exist like that. The human family either will equalize its assets.
Be a human family
right,
or not.
Or not, because that's why they will perish. And every device they use to try to keep this caste system or this exclusiveness is going to fail. We're in another age now, and that old system of exploiting people is gone. It just takes time for rigor mortis to set in.
So death is a process.
Yes.
It's not an event.
It's like the sunrise, you know, it doesn't pop up all of a sudden. It takes time. It has to announce itself and then manifest. That's cosmic energy.
Well, we need to understand more about process, because we just know about events. You know, somebody was born, somebody died, you know, and they died at such and such a time, you know, on this day, as though the death was not a process that was already in place before the last breath.
When you were born, you drew a straw that says your whole existence would be such and such. And some people say they believe in this. It's not a matter of what you believe in, it's a matter of what you experience. And life is a process to find your eternity. If you don't find it, then your life was a waste.
And how do you go about seeking your eternity?
You have to be conscious that it exists and search for it. There's no way that you could be denied it as long as you're looking for it.
Do you meditate?
Quite frequently. That's what my music was based in. When I decided to change from what I was taught in music into what I wanted to develop in harmony with the skies and things like that, all of my instruments, the harp, the trumpet, all the instruments that I play, I began to meditate on them. And I asked the Creator to give me the knowledge I needed to perform on those instruments. And little by little, all of my instruments are an expression of meditation. I wanted to bring the harp today, but you know, I've played it so many times on your show.
Well, I wouldn't have minded having you play it again today.
I wouldn't either, but I vowed that I wouldn't go anywhere without my harp. But I'm scheduled to perform in Paris in January.
Really?
Yeah,
Where?
January the 30th for the jazz festival there.
All right.
Along with my sons, Hypnotic.
Okay.
And I'm distressed because they called me up and asked me to come there, and I said I didn't see I could take my harp over there. I didn't want to go because I want to take it everywhere I go.
All right.
So they say we have harps over there, but they don't understand. My harp is 42 years old and it's blessed. So I don't want that. There's no
just an instrument.
Yeah, I don't want just a harp. I want the instrument. And I like to point out that I play what I play the system that King David played. I don't play what they teach in schools anywhere. And so you'll see my system copied more and more because it's cosmic language.
You did the beautiful, beautiful concert at Millennium Park. The concept behind that was a tribute to Sun Ra.
Right.
Talk to me about that, because it
well,
was
first of all, I had such an outstanding respect for Sun Ra because he opened up my world. I had borders in my mind from the education that I had been given. You know, even though I didn't complete the college training, I still was filled up with the American educational system, which places borders all around your mind. Sun Ra blew them all away, where there were no borders in any direction that I cared to think of. So I wanted to pay tribute to him, not to him, but to the world, to let them know who this great man was in the 20th century. And that was my inspiration. Of course, I used the openings that he gave me to penetrate many different directions, and I wanted to demonstrate some of those directions that I had perfected from his influence. I didn't copy him. He opened me up, and I did things that maybe he possibly never did. But I wanted to show. One of the things was I used discs that were a cubit in diameter. Now, the cubit is a holy measurement. And so people were looking at discs that were a cubit in size. That was one thing.
How did you get the measurement?
Well, that's from study.
Okay.
I mean, all things are available to people who look, especially if it's in your ancestry. You can find anything your ancestors did. So I showed the disc, but the first thing was I used the colors of the rainbow. And the rainbow is the symbol of the Earth's relationship to the cosmos. So that's why everything cosmically is in 7. You notice the gay people were using 6 colors in their rainbow, and somebody hit them, pulled their coat, and they started using 7 colors. But there are 7 colors in the rainbow, and those 7 colors give you the whole energy of everything in existence. And so your body is based in 7s. The cosmos is based in 7. Their first 7 bodies, they used the sun and the moon and 5 planets. That was the original knowledge in the heavens. They couldn't see Uranus, they couldn't see Neptune, and they couldn't see Pluto. It wasn't until they got sophisticated viewing devices to learn that they existed.
Well, they looked for them.
Well, they knew of their existence spiritually. See, there are other things out there beyond that that they know too. There wasn't a propensity to try to travel to those places because they could tap that knowledge from internal sources. And I think that's one of the reasons there's so much fuss over going in the cosmos now. They're spending billions of dollars up there. And I'm not contrary to that because I'm an astronomer also. And I support knowledge because many good devices can be learned from exploring space. But this obsession with studying space while leaving hungry people on the earth, spending billions of dollars for things like that. I do not support that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the earth should be brought into harmony and order and discipline. We've got children going in schools and shooting up schools. Mm-hmm. We've got all types of breakdown in our society. People are misusing all of the knowledge. And so the human family needs to get together in order first. Let's get together before we do anything else. Mm-hmm. If you've got any energy or any resources, put them on order and discipline of the human family. Mm-hmm. And sharing. See, I'm like with Buckminster Fuller. He's the only one other person I know that really advocates that.
You know, I think about yourself, and there are maybe one or two others that you have given your life. I know that you have experienced great success in many of the enterprises that you've been involved in, because I've been around to see you do it.
The credit's due to the ancestors.
But then I see at this stage in your life, I see what appears to me to be a lessening of your resources. And I'm wondering about a community that could have in its midst people that, you know, even in the European community, mm-hmm. they would have patrons, they would have people would support artists. Mm-hmm. There would be somebody who would see to it that
they
this
support
person
artists now. It's just the artists can't do anything. You know what I mean? I look at, like on the morning news, you know, they throw some hillbillies up there playing country and western
Those
music.
aren't artists.
Well, I mean, they think they are, and so they'll defend where they are, but the true fact of the matter is that they're not hooking up with anything of value, and nothing is going to come out of that contributes to the knowledge and understanding of the masses of the people.
But you ought to be a wealthy man.
No, I don't have to be wealthy. I am wealthy in this sense, that I'm contrary to this society, and so it has to punish me because I'm not going to support it.
But you should have been supported by your community for the whole length
my community
and breadth
belongs to the people who run this society, not to us. For instance, like I mentioned, the Afro Arts Theater. Mm-hmm. You know, it was very wholesome mm-hmm. and good, and lots of people knew about it.
And lots of people came.
But the thing about it is, when it was put down, there were negative connotations to it, and things ascribed to us that we had done something wrong or like that, and people are easy to believe that kind of stuff. And so, naturally, they copied what we did without supporting the originators.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's all. None of that bothers me, because I understand the way people behave, and it's quite comfortable with me. I believe that the ancestors protect me and provide for me, and if I don't have this, I don't need it.
Well, you certainly don't seem to ever need a mm-hmm. winter coat in the wintertime. How did you learn to not respond to the environment that everybody else is so greatly affected by?
That came from my understanding of my ancestry. You see, I realized that the African is also the Eskimo. He went to the ice cap and found a way to exist there without becoming in it, without actually mutating that much. You see? And so when Matthew Henson went to the North Pole with Admiral Byrd, the first thing they pointed and they saw he was black, they said, "That's Inuit." That means mm-hmm. them. That's Inuit. That's Inuit. Mm-hmm. See, no, I realize that I come from the stock of the original people, and I realize that my seed is more flexible than anything that walks the planet Earth. So therefore, I had to prove it to myself, since I'm a member of this water body called Lake Michigan. I began to bathe with it, and so I still do. I bathe with it, cold water. And wherever the lake goes, I go with it. Therefore, the environment that's surrounding this lake, I'm a part of it.
And that's mind power.
Yeah, that's what we were blessed with.
That's
what we have.
Okay.
See, but I never would have found that if I hadn't had the borders erased. You see, I had to look in every direction to find my meaning in life. I couldn't allow a border to stop me here or to stop me there.
And certainly nothing that I haven't seen anything to stop you when you have
Well,
decided.
this coffee shook me up.
But I heard you once say that caffeine wasn't all bad, that it had some
Oh, there are good
value.
properties in everything, and there are
Okay.
bad properties in everything. You see, that's the thing about it. We have to learn to deal with the negative and positive of all things. But I was a little chill, and so I went over and got some coffee, and it made me nervous. See?
You don't appear to be.
Oh, yeah,
nervous.
I'm quite nervous. You know.
Are you?
Yeah, but it doesn't
Okay.
affect my thinking. You know.
All right. You're playing at the Ethiopian Diamond.
The strangest thing, you know, I thought with the economy going down that they would drop off, and I'm sure everybody else was worried about it. They're so packed in there now that I can't even find any place to sit on intermission. I have to stay on the bandstand. And that's the last 2 weeks, you know.
And there are probably things that will thrive in this environment, and things that won't.
It's like those animals I said that become extinct. The things that support what is coming will survive. The things that are contrary to what is coming will die.
Okay. And there's nothing you can do about it?
Nothing anybody can do.
Okay.
It's the way of the cycle that we're in.
Okay. Do you offer classes outside of the Center for Inner City Studies?
Well, I don't have time for it. That's why I set up class
right.
there.
Okay.
See, it takes me a day to prepare for one class.
Okay.
I've got 2 classes, so that's 4 days
It's
right
gone.
there.
Okay.
Then I got 2 performances. That's 6 days.
Okay, so you rest? You actually rest sometimes?
Well, you know, I don't blow a fuse in what I'm doing, but I
Okay.
spend all of the time that I can in preparing to make my final delivery.
Okay.
Just like Margaret said, you know, we don't have time to get old or to die.
Well,
There's too much to do.
I can see that. I'm wondering about the health, though, the health classes that you used to offer, because that's a necessary thing, because, you know, these health food stores have gone off into just offering people vanity products, you know, just something that won't
It's kind of like a curve.
You won't gain weight or something, you know.
Well, it's kind of like a curve, you know. They'll start out right and curve into the stuff they've been doing all along.
Okay.
Just like at one time I found some organic pork, you know, being sold at a health food store.
Okay, a free range.
Yeah. You know, but the truth of the matter is, like I said, it's the concept of giving and taking. Takers are going to continue to take until they're extinct, and givers will continue to give until they prevail.
But you can give in the wrong direction sometimes.
That's true.
I remember Yikwe Arma in 2000 season said, "My people, stop flowing to the desert.
Right.
The desert takes,
Right.
it does not give." So you can just keep pouring something into something that only can absorb you. At some point you have to be discriminating or discerning about that and those to whom you give.
Then comes the cycle again, because the Kalahari and the Sahara has given much to my people.
Okay.
And some of the greatest people. In fact, I identify with the people on the Kalahari Desert. They're the most enlightened people I've seen in studying cultures. And so there's something of giving in the desert. That was his concept, because he probably stayed in the rainforest.
Well, he was talking about the spring water. He was comparing black people to spring water, and the metaphor was Europeans were the desert, and Africans were the spring water. And the spring water was flowing to the desert, and the desert was absorbing the spring water, and we certainly were not benefiting
But that's a
from
cycle.
that relationship.
See, that's a cycle. That wasn't the end. That was just a cycle, because it reverses itself. And now the desert is giving out to the water. You see, all things are cyclic. And that's what the music is. It's the language of cycles. And that's the lecture I gave out at O'Hare back, what, in '98 or something like that. And they made a CD of it, and it was our biggest selling item out there. People may not have understood it, but they realized that cycles are what we experience. And if we understand our life in terms of cycles, for instance, our first cycle is nurture, which is 4 years in the making. All right, we come on this earth and we are nurtured for 4 years. That's lunar. The moon is closest to the earth, and so it nurtures us. Everything that we do is related to the moon, and that's why the nurture is the first. Then the next cycle is Mercury, which is our learning, our intellect, and all of that. For 10 years, we're learning and absorbing everything, pulling in the whole universe. And then Venus is the next cycle, and Venus is our sexual awakening, and that blocks out everything else. But it's necessary because it's in the center of the circle. And then the cycle after that is the sun, which gives us 19 years to discover our meaning on this earth. So it's all right for us to be remiss until we get in that cycle. Then we have to begin to put together our true lives according to our ancestral flow. After that, we have Mars cycle, and that's for about 15 years, which is pain. We have to have problems. We have to have trouble. We have to catch hell. You understand? Understand that that is a prime part of the life experience. People look for pleasure all the time, but pleasure comes in cycles, just like everything else. And so we have to stop trying to run to pleasure all the times and accept life as it is presented to us and do the best we can with it. So that's what we learn in that Mars cycle. Then we come into mastery. After we suffer, we are eligible to become masters because we've been tempered with mercy. That lasts so long, and then the last cycle is mastery. Is completion, I'm sorry. After mastery is completion. And I'm in my completion cycle now. And I'd like to point out that no matter what you learn as a young person, it all comes together as a sphere in your completion cycle. And it's very enjoyable to go through that, to see little things you learned over here and things you learned over there, having no idea they have a relationship to each other, and then see that they become one.
Well, I didn't interrupt you because I was sure hoping you would get through that whole thing, and you did. And I'm so glad,
well, thank you. I love
Cohran,
you so much, you know that.
Because that was just so perfect that you were able to go through all those cycles for us. And I'm certain that there will be people who will want to come and attend your classes. What do they have to do? Come down to the center?
Well, yes, the center, Jacob Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies.
All right.